says cautiously.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting for Tuesday, January 21st. I first await a motion to leave the non-public and to seal the meeting minutes of the non-public session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Kelly, will you please take the roll?
Mayor McEachran,
Here.
Assistant Mayor Kelly,
Here.
Councilor Tabor.
Here.
Councilor Cook. Will
Here.
Be there she is. Councilor Denton.
Here.
Councilor Blaylock.
Present.
Councilor Bagley.
Here.
Councilor Moreau.
Here.
Councilor Lombardi.
Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We first start off with a presentation, and after we go through the presentation, public comment will also then be bringing up budget guidance immediately following that. But we will pass it on to Matt Hunt of CLA.
Welcome Matt Hunt and Phil Huang of CLA. They have been serving as our auditors.
Good evening. People hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us here. Matthew Hunt with Clifton Larson Allen, here with Phil Wong of CLA as well. Thank you for having us here to present the results of the city's FY24 financial statement audit. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, on a high level, terms of engagement, what is the purpose of the audit, and then we'll talk about an executive summary, so the high level key points within the audit. Then we'll get into some financial highlights. Phil will also talk about the management letter report that was issued as part of the audit. Then we'll discuss some required communications that we have to communicate with the council, and then we'll open it up for questions. So getting into it, in terms of the terms of the engagement, what exactly is the focus of the audit? What is the purpose of the audit? It's a couple key items. First, we have to express an opinion on the city's financial statements to determine whether the financial statements are reported in accordance with GAAP. We also have to provide a report on internal controls if there's any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal controls. We would have to report those to you. And then also, if there were any other significant findings as part of the audit, that would be part of our required communications to the council. In terms of an overall executive summary based on those objectives of the audit, the audit was very positive for the city. In terms of your opinion on your financial statements, it's considered what is called an unmodified opinion. That's the best opinion that you can receive in an external audit of the financial statements, and what that essentially means is that during the course of our audit, we did not identify any material misstatements to the city's financial statements. No internal control findings were discovered in terms of significant deficiencies and material weaknesses and controls. We also did not come across any non-compliance with laws or regulations that would have an impact on the financials. And again, no material issues to report to the city council. So overall, I would consider it what you would consider a quote-unquote clean audit for FY24. Phil's going to talk about some of the financial highlights, but I'll at least talk about the general fund. Obviously, that's one of your more important pieces of your financial statement. So you'll see here, there's a comp between some key numbers within the general fund for FY24 versus FY23. One thing that may stand out is the fact that there was a negative net change in fund balance for the general fund, but keep in mind that your overall unassigned fund balance, that first number there, that number actually increased. And also your ratio there, that 13.65% ratio of your unassigned fund balance as compared to your budget, that ratio is also very consistent with the prior year and also in line with council targets. So now I'll turn it over to Phil to talk about some of the other financial highlights.
Thank you, Matt. All right, so here we've got the long-term liabilities summary. You got your three largest liabilities for the city, which is the long-term debt outstanding, the pension liability, and the OPEB liability. As you can see, in the comparison, the long-term debt outstanding increased just slightly over the prior year, but then your pension and OPEB liabilities, those remained relatively consistent compared to the prior year. Certain things like your discount rate and assumptions that were used to measure these liabilities were consistent with what was used to measure the prior year liabilities.
And what is OPEB?
Other post-employment benefit.
Thank you.
As we get to the Water Enterprise Fund here, you'll see that the long-term debt liability here also increased slightly. Again, with your pension and OPEB liabilities, these remained consistent with the prior year. The water fund's ending net position here maintained a strong net position at the end of the year of approximately $64 million, and the change in net position is approximately $1.2 million for the year, which is consistent with the results of the prior year for this fund. And as we get into the sewer fund, you'll see that the long-term debt liability here, that remained very consistent as compared to the prior year. Again, your OPEB and pension liabilities, these remained relatively stable compared to the prior year. And your net position, again, it's been, the city ended, or the fund ended with a strong net position of approximately $84.8 million. And your net change in net position is consistent with the prior year as well.
Could I, as loudly as I can, to piggyback on the question the council had?
Nathan, if you could
I will.
speak into the microphone.
Good evening, folks. Councilor Tabor asked about OPEB. I just want to make sure I drew attention. Other post-employment benefits, the overwhelming majority of that, help me if I forget anything, is our grandfathered sick leave at termination provision, which you see is dwindling. The pension liability that's here really refers to that stated liability related to the New Hampshire retirement system. How am I doing? Is that fair?
I think so.
Okay, good.
I think we're at the management letter now. I do just want to talk about the management letter here. I just want to point out that these are not significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. These are just things that we came across during our IT audit and things that we just wanted to point out and make recommendations. I also do want to point out that the prior year management letter comments have been resolved, which is, great, and a credit to the city for, resolving these issues that we identified in the prior year audit. So basically, as it pertains to the management letter comment, during our procedures that we had noticed that there were several older, outdated operating systems that were still being used, and so the management letter comments sort of point out to the risks and point out recommendations to mitigate some of these risks for the city. And with speaking with the city's management, it seems like there's a plan in place and to address these issues moving forward. And I'll turn it over back to Matt.
Okay, great. I will wrap things up here with some other required communications that we want to present to the council. When it comes to your significant accounting policies, the manager of the city is responsible for those policies. Your significant accounting policies are all described in Note 1 to the financial statements, and we did not identify any transactions that lacked authoritative guidance. Your note disclosures are considered neutral, consistent, and clear. In terms of any significant or unusual transactions, we did not identify any of those. In terms of disagreements with management, there were none. In terms of any consultations with other independent accountants other than our firm during the audit, we are not aware of any. And then in terms of any significant issues discussed with management prior to the audit, those were all within the normal course of our relationship. So really that is really the sort of the summary that we wanted to present to the council, and now I'd like to open it up with any questions.
Thank you, Matt and Phil. We'll go with Council Morrell.
And I hope this is the case because management said that I believe, and maybe Nathan is the right person to answer this, that the new software that you guys have been working towards installing for the financial books and department, that will actually cure all of the issues that have been mentioned regarding the older server software issues.
Nathan might be able to speak a little bit more about the new program that you're installing, new software, but I don't know if the two are necessarily interconnected. Again, we have IT specialists that perform that portion of the audit. I don't consider myself an information technology specialist, but I think it's really more from an operating system perspective. You just have some workstations that have some old operating systems, but I'm not quite sure there's a connection between that and any kind of new financial software that you're looking into. I think that those are two separate and distinct. But it looked like from the management response, from the IT director's response, and the fact that you cleared 5 comments from last year, I do believe there's a good plan in place to resolve that particular issue that's in the management letter.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Phil or Matt? Councilor Tabor.
Thanks, Mayor. For this budget, for the FY '24 budget, we're facing a big drop in state revenue, 3.9 million. So the city manager proposed and we approved putting $2 million from unassigned fund balance to offset some of those lost state revenues. And it looks to me like we ended the year not only making up that $2 million, but unassigned fund balance came out even rosier. And it looked like revenue for building permits was $1 million over, and revenue from interest income was 1.2 million over. Is it fair to look at causality there, or is that kind of the story?
Yes, I think actually that's a good summary in terms of the general fund going down. I think $2.5 million. Keep in mind the fact that your budget actually was budgeting even more of a decrease than that. The fact that you had some of those positive revenue variances, revenues coming in higher than expected, expenses also came in a little bit lower. You're able to turn back some of those funds that help offset the use of fund balance for the budget. So yes, there was a decrease, but it was budgeted for. It was actually budgeted to even be a larger decrease. And so I think the key thing there is that you see that it all offset to the point where that unassigned fund balance ratio that we talked about was very similar to the prior year, even though the general fund went down. And I think that's the reason, as you stated, is because of some of those positive variances to the budget.
Thanks.
Seeing no more questions, Matt, Phil, thank you very much for the report here today and the presentation and for the partnership. It's been a pleasure working with you over the past year here. It's great.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We next have we'll get through public comment and then bring up item on budget guidance. First up, acceptance of minutes, December 2nd, 2024, December 9th, 2024.
I make a motion, we move to accept and approve the minutes of December 2nd, 2024, December 9th, 2024 city council meetings.
Second.
We'll need a roll call vote in this.
Okay.
I think because, or I could have snuck it by, but we still have Councilor Cook on Zoom.
Oh, correct. Sorry, forgot that we have to do roll calls for that. Assistant Mayor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Tabor.
Yes.
Councilor Cook.
Yes.
Okay. Councilor Denton.
Yes.
Councilor Blaylock.
Yes.
Councilor Bagley.
Yes.
Councilor Moreau.
Yes.
Councilor Lombardi.
Yes.
Mayor McEachran.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Next on to public comment. We first have Peter Huda on follow-up FY23 audit report, FY26 budget.
Good evening, Peter Huda, 280 South Street. My first question is, from last year's management report, I think it was partially addressed by the gentlemen that were just here, but there were three deficiencies outlined last year, and one of them was information technologies. The other one was accounts payable, which was significant. And the last one was compensated absences. So it sounded like the information technology was taken care of, but they didn't elaborate. So that would be my first question. They had a recommendation on information technologies. They had 5 points on there that needed to be taken care of. So I was wondering how that got taken care of. and I was kind of hoping for a little bit of a report on that. The second one was an evaluation of internal controls in accounts payable. And this is significant due to the embezzlement down in Seabrook. The problem was that we had individuals within the finance department had the ability to create new vendors, enter invoices, prepare cash disbursements, and process the distributions. What this means is they could do everything and run it right through the system. So I was hoping that this would have been addressed in the audit, and I was wondering how the city had remedied this situation. If the gentlemen are gone, I don't know if Nathan or anybody else could address this situation. It would be greatly appreciated. This one is significant. It's very important to have internal controls, especially on this. In the management letter last time, basically what the staff said was they didn't have enough staff to do this. In my opinion, that's not an excuse. The next thing would be the budget that you're going to put forward tonight, or the guidance. I would urge you, since we still don't know what FY24 was, I couldn't see the numbers, they were standing in front of me. When that does come out, I would urge you, if you are going to try to increase this budget 3.5%, to start with your actual from FY24. That is the amount that was needed to provide the services that were needed for the city. We have no idea where we are now. We're 7 months in, so I would urge you to be cautious and think about the citizens. People are crippled by what happened with the taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. Next up is Sue Sterry on cemeteries.
Good evening, Sue Sterry, Broad Street, Portsmouth, and I'm speaking on this as both a citizen and as co-chair of the Cemetery Committee. I would like to update the City Council on recent restoration projects at North Cemetery. In November, the DPW cleared all the invasives along the water side of the cemetery. By removing the heavy underbrush, it has eliminated the historic hangout places at that point in the cemetery. In December, the DPW crew removed the chain link fence and cleared the brush, which runs parallel to the right-of-way. When weather permits, 2 dead trees will be removed, grading and grass and seeding will take place, finishing the project. We used the $2,500 grant given by Thomas Balon Jr., developer of 161 Deer Street, which is the adjacent new building to North Cemetery. July 4th, 2026 is the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Our North Cemetery has 22 patriot leaders that played significant roles in the American Revolution. Portsmouth is fortunate enough to have one of the signers of the Declaration, William Whipple, buried in our North Cemetery. On tonight's agenda, the City Council will vote to accept a $10,000 grant from the David and Jacqueline Mahoney Fund, which is specified to be used for the North Cemetery restoration programs. This generous donation will enable the Cemetery Committee to carry out its mission of restoring and preserving our historical cemeteries for the future generations. I also want to take time to thank Dave Desvos's City Project Manager, Max Waite, City Arborist, Corin Hallowell, Parks and Greenery Foreman, and the men and women of their crews who have diligently worked on all of these cemetery projects. And since I have a few seconds left, I really would like the city to consider about appointing some sort of committee for this 250th celebration. I think because of our cemetery north, we're one of the fortunate cities in New England to have such prominent people buried there. And with this money, we'll be able to make way more restorations than in the past. So I would really like to showcase what we have here in Portsmouth as an example to other communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. And it does indeed look fantastic. back there, and without the chain link fence, you can walk right through it and sit down. If it wasn't so cold, I'd sit longer, but it's appreciated. Seeing nobody else sign up or any
Nope.
hands raised, we will move on to the rest of the agenda, and I'd wait a motion to suspend the rules and move up Councilor Tabor's item, guidance to the city manager regarding the FY26 budget.
So moved.
Second.
And we will have a roll call vote.
Assistant Mayor Kelly,
Yes.
Counselor Tabor,
Yes.
Counselor Cook,
Yes.
Counselor Denton,
Yes.
Counselor Blaylock,
Yes.
Counselor Bagley,
Yes.
Counselor Moreau,
Yes.
Counselor Lombardi,
Yes.
Mayor McEachran.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Councilor Tabor.
Yep, thanks, Your Honor. I would move that the city council adopt the following guidance for the city manager for FY26 budget. Target a 3.5% increase in total expenditure, no increase in headcount unless the position is self-funding, and if the targets will result in a loss of the current level of services, provide details and explanation from affected departments to the city council.
Second.
I think we all know that our residential taxpayers are getting squeezed, and right now the taxes are rising faster than incomes. I asked the city manager for some data on the revaluation. More than half of our residents, 54%, have seen a 10% or greater tax increase just from the revaluation. The median tax increase is $660. If you apply that to the median home, that hypothetical median family had a jump of 7.7%. Now, if we take the budget estimate of 6.13 and add that to 7 or 8%, that just crushes our taxpayers and gets us into double-digit increases. And of course, there's cases of people having 15, 20% increases out of the revaluation. So the effect of this is that taxpayers seeing their taxes go up faster than their income, and that will drive out young families and senior citizens. And it just, you know, it hurts the quality of life for everyone. So that's why I put forward for our discussion tonight a target of 3.5%. That's going to take some hard choices. We've heard from Nathan Lunny that 4% is the trend in the payroll with step increases and COLAs. And in some departments, is as high as 6% is the basic run rate, no new positions. So I think 3.5% is the absolute maximum that's fiscally responsible on our part. And, you know, it's going to take some work to get to that. But that's what I thought I would put forward to us for our discussion tonight.
Thank you, Councilor Tabor. And before we just jump into the conversation, I do want to answer a public speaker's question in that all issues from last year's on the audit were resolved. And so while they're not in the this year's audit, that's because they were resolved, and we'll make that information available on the website to clarify that.
If I can add further color, Your Honor, the FY23 management letter with our responses are already on the website, and as of tonight or tomorrow, all of tonight's information, PAFR, ACFR, management information will be on the website.
Thank you.
For FY24.
Councilor Bagley.
Thank you, Your Honor. First, I want to thank Councilor Tabor, who I guess it's just about annually now, it brings forward this guidance, which takes a lot of work. One of the things before you brought forward this guidance, because the numbers were just released over the last 24 to 48 hours, is the COLA increase for Social Security this year, I believe, is at 2.5%. And the adjusted rate of inflation ending in December of 2024 was 2.9%. I know 3.5% is a very challenging number to meet, but I would certainly be in support of suggesting a range of 2.5 to 2.9% instead of 3.5 if it had support from my colleagues up here.
I would just, in terms of anything that we are looking to vote on, a number would be my preference instead of a band, because the band will be the
Maximum number.
It will be the highest regardless. So if we vote on a number, whether it's 3.5 or lower at 2.9% with inflation, would want to look at just a number. Councilor Blatt.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make an amendment to make the target a 0% increase. If I have a second, I'll speak to it.
Second for conversation.
So as Councilor Tabor said, more than half of our taxpayers, their bills have already gone up 10%, over 10%. A lot of people, their bills have gone up over 50%. And we knew this evaluation was coming. It wasn't a surprise. We knew it was going to hit taxpayers hard. But I think it's our job, and I know it's not an easy job, is to hold the city accountable for our taxpayers and hold the line on a 0% increase. Every company I've ever been involved with or run or anything, that the expectation's always been a 0%. Usually a lot of times managers or CEOs will get incentives to come below 1% or below a 0% increase. And then that becomes their budget the next year. So I do understand, the COLA is built into the budget, the step increases. But if we need to find more for some areas, then we need to take it out of some other areas. But I trust our city staff. I think we have a phenomenal staff. I trust all the departments, and I have faith in them that they can look out for the taxpayers of Portsmouth and find a way to get to 0% increase without the quality of our services suffering.
Before we go to Councilor Bagley, I did want to recognize Councilor Cook. Go back to second bites of the apple.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councilor Bagley that I think it's really critical to be paying attention to that Social Security COLA number, because when we think about this increase overall, those that are living on a fixed income, specifically those that are really dependent on their Social Security income, are going to be impacted very significantly by any increase. So I think that 2.5% Social Security COLA number probably should be the limit, and we should be thinking about getting the budget underneath that number. I'm a little concerned about a zero budget. It's one thing to say we're not going to have any increases at all across the board in the budget, and then we're cutting from spending that is not mandated by salaries. But if we say we want a 0% budget, we're essentially going to have to cut significant numbers of staff because of negotiated contracts that, basically tie us in to 3-4% increases. And those contracts were mostly negotiated at a time when interest rates were much higher, and the city actually did well in getting the deals we did. So I think we should be really mindful of that and not wanting to cut significant numbers of individuals from the budget and cut jobs, but at the same time, we need to be mindful of where our residents stand and not really put any more stress and strain on those who are on a fixed income.
Thank you, Councilor Cook. Councilor Bagley.
Thank you, Your Honor. I agree with Councilor Cook's statements. Before I was on the council, I think there was a previous group of people up here had suggested a 0% increase in the budget, and I think that would be devastating. Most of our contracts have a rolling COLA increase built into them of over 2.5%. That's the bulk of the cost that the city bears is in salaries. So if we were to go for a 0%, not only would the cuts be drastic, they would not be strategic, in my opinion, because we'd only be able to cut certain places because of the union contracts, and we'd have to make deep, drastic cuts in only those areas where we're able to make cuts or have the flexibility to make cuts. And I don't think that's the appropriate way to, I think that would be a short-sighted way to go about reducing the budget. I think I would really like to see us at 2.5% because of the Social Security COLA. But to the mayor's point, if we give a range, probably we'll end up at the top of that range. And I think even 2.5% is less than most of the COLAs that our salaries have built into them. And I don't want to see us in a position where we're making drastic cuts. I want to see us in a position where we're hitting the pause button on any increases. So I think either Councilor Tabor's 3.5% I would support, or the 2.9% that I suggested at the top of the range.
So the previous council where we had given the budget guidance of 0%, we didn't come in at a 0% after all said and done. But the exercise was painful, but illuminated what those positions were. And I think that it would not be unreasonable if we ended at 2.5% from a budgetary standpoint to look what a 0% after 2024 actuals would be, or sorry, 2025 actuals would be. I think that it would give a sense to the resident what questions or what decisions would have to be made in order to get us to a 0% budget. And for many residents of Portsmouth, those decisions are outside of the what we're willing to give up in services or positions from that. But it doesn't, I think it ends up helping the conversation when we look at that from a 0%, because people naturally want to know, why does it have to increase at all? And so it helps frame that conversation. So I'd be amenable to if we move down to 2.5% and align to inflation, to look at the 0% as an exercise from last year's actuals, from a standpoint of getting as much information to the council as possible. Councilor Blaylock, then, oh, wait, hold on, Assistant Mayor, because she doesn't.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would be supportive of Councilor Bagley's amendment of 2.9%. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say my frustration as a councilor being up here is that I in the hope going forward is that maybe we can switch the way that we handle kind of our guidance to maybe come earlier. I know some years that's difficult with elections and you don't know what council and different financial stakes that are up, like this year with the reassessment. But I think that what I would like to see and make sure that happens is that any guidance not only goes to the city manager and the general operating fund in what is controlled by her office, but also the charter commissions. I think there's many times that people don't understand that, well, we may control the bottom line of those commissions, the police, the fire, the school. We do not control their line item. And so I think that is where things can get hairy within in the budgeting process, especially when you think that the school is 50% of our budget. And so trying to find a way going forward to have a broader conversation with those charter commissions before we get deep into budget preparation, so that we're not looking back now trying to cut, and there's clear guidance before budget preparations are presented to leadership. That would be my goal and wish going forward, so that we don't have to backtrack.
Thank you, Assistant Mayor. Councilor Blaylock, then Councilor Morrow.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I just reiterate that tonight we're just giving guidance. We're setting a goal, a target. We're encouraging all the departments to try to come back with a 0%, see if they can do it, see if it is possible. And then see what, if they can't, then see what it has to be eliminated to get there, so there's a full understanding. I understand it's always really, really, really hard to come underneath inflation. Like, that means you're actually doing more with less, which I think everybody wants to try to do, but it is not easy. I mean, my business experience in Portsmouth, a lot of times I don't come below my budget. You know, it doesn't work out that way. But you got to try. And I think our guidance should be as frugal as possible. And I think each department should try and then show us, help us understand why they can't do that if it's not possible.
Councilor Morell?
I'm just with like a clarification from Councilor Tabor. When you say increase in the total expenditure, are you talking about what was budgeted as the total expenditure or what was actually spent in total expenditures?
Versus actual.
So it would be the actual spend. Okay. With that knowledge, I do think it would, I'm along the lines of Assistant Mayor and Councilor Bagley and Councilor Cook. I would rather see something around under 3%. I mean, I would go as high as 2.9, but probably 2.5 is a better goal, and then see where we end up at that point. As much as 0% might be actual, it's an extremely hard to get when we have all the contracts that we already have written in. All those increases are there. So clearly, to get to there, somebody and some things are always going to have to go. So in the hindsight that we've already approved so many of these bargaining agreements, I feel like at least the 2.5% is a good number to start at.
Councilor Bagley?
Just to further the discussion, I would, did you make an amendment? Is there an amendment on the floor?
Yep, there's an amendment on the floor.
For 0%.
Should we vote on the,
I have a question for Nathan before we vote. Nathan, would you mind answering what the existing contracts would mean in terms of employees, step increases and COLA from existing employees to, with no new positions, but existing employees to, what is that as a percentage of the budget next year?
As Nathan is approaching, I just want to clarify that we could work with FY24 actuals. We're currently still in FY25. And as a point of reference, 25 is 4.5% higher than the FY24 actuals. So just want to put level set of information out there.
Right, yeah.
Good evening, Mayor, councilors.
So the question restated,
Do that again.
how much from a percentage of current contracted employees, step increases and COLA, what would that result in an increase of the budget?
It'd take me a little bit of data work to be obviously exact, but if we contemplate that our 10-year rolling average COLA right now is 2.84%, and that all of our negotiated agreements, if settled reasonably, have steps that are anywhere between, they're anywhere between 1.5% and 5% steps, somewhere in there, recognizing that when folks reach the top of the step, their increases, I should have said between 1% and 5%. When they reach the top of the scale, then they in many cases top out and receive no step increases, and they would only have the COLA. But I think when I've said before that the rough numbers that we have would suggest that the step impacts somewhere between 1% and 5% for a significant percentage of our people, added to a COLA of 2.84, along with the roll-ups of taxes, retirement costs, et cetera, generally speaking, chase up between 4 and 4.5%. And again, most of my experience with that comes from the school department, because I've seen it for the last handful of years. But in looking at PMA and SMA and a couple of the other not settled agreements that we're prepping for negotiations, they're consistent with that. They have steps, and if you prorate for the number of people in the grid who will get the step against those that are at the top and will get no step, it still should direct something in that 4 to 4.5% range.
Okay, and that's not taking into account any positions that are those are just budgeted positions, not positions that may or may not have been filled in that time period. And it's not taking into account any positions that might not be, have been replaced if somebody retires.
Right.
Okay.
No actualization, therefore, I had a 50,000 that was replaced by somebody making 40, and those are very rough, but those numbers and that calculation, as we said last Wednesday night, that's something that we need to have and we'll have as a part of the process.
So it gets to the larger point for me in terms of the budget guidance, both to the departments but also to the residents. When we gave the zero guidance, the amount of it's one way to do it, certainly, but the amount of consternation that created within the departments, and not the departments, because departments are also citizens too, in many cases of Portsmouth, but the fear among residents of Portsmouth of what would be removed from that was a hard conversation to navigate through in budget season, and it raised the temperature of what we were trying to do, and that was during the pandemic, be as frugal as possible with an uncertain future in terms of revenues. That's why a 2.9% in terms of is slightly above what we expect the 10-year rolling average, and it's still in line with what inflation is today. A 0% would be, it would immediately mean cuts, and while that's from a position standpoint, and while that is useful from an exercise where the residents are understanding what they would lose with no increase in the budget, it is difficult to then marry that, because the conversation tends to move to the positions that would be, now how to say this more easily, but they are the positions that tend to move the conversation into more of a emotional place when we're trying to have that. So I think it would be great, and if we could work on an amendment that has what 0% would mean while targeting 2.9% or thereabouts for inflation, whatever we're going to lay on inflation, I think we would end up having a conversation that gets the best of both of those worlds. And again, from City Manager raises we are still in 2025, so the actual numbers are not done yet, but to look at, especially from a, I would say from if we could move that towards a filled rate, those positions that currently are, we can look at the year previous to 2024, add the additional amount that we had in that budget increase, and then look at the positions that are actually filled and not look at placeholders for future budgets. And I don't know how we word that into a more concise motion, but that would be more helpful. Councillor Bagley, is that a question?
Oh, no, I'm just formulating the motion in my head,
Kate,
but we have.
Oh, Kate, do you have a, Councillor Cook?
Thank you, Your Honor. I wanted to say that this is budget guidance again, and I don't know that I could come in comfortably above 2.5%, knowing that that's a Social Security COLA, and knowing that it's also guidance, and knowing that we will get information back through this process about whether or not that guidance is achievable without eliminating positions, and we'll also get guidance on what has to be eliminated to achieve 2.5%. I also think it's really important to be, thinking about those positions that you highlight, Mr. Mayor, about positions that have gone unfilled and what it would mean to eliminate positions like that from the budget. And also, I think we should look very carefully at those positions where people are eligible for retirement soon. And that's something that across the city government we should be thinking about, positions that if someone did retire, maybe we wouldn't be filling that position.
Councillor Cook. Councillor Lombardi.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with the above, that perhaps a 2.9 request is appropriate. at the work session with the Budget Committee, I had suggested that we get the numbers of positions that have been unfilled over the past few years and see if there's a trend of an existing range of that number that is fairly consistent. And then we can take a look at what that could possibly mean in terms of savings of not filling positions that have been left unfilled for a while.
Counselor Tabor, motion's still on the floor at 0%.
Yes.
Amendment.
Amendment.
The amendment is still on the floor, yes. I just wanted to say why I don't think I would vote for a 0%. You're right. We had tried that in 2019, 2020, I can't remember. And I know from my own experience running a business that you have wage increases, and to offset wage increases, to stay at 0, you have to have fewer people. Typically, and I was in a mature declining business, so we faced this all the time, and we would probably freeze hiring. The problem with freezing hiring is, a teacher retires. You can't fill that position. Somebody in DPW who's part of our great crew that picks up trash retires. You can't replace them. So you inevitably start to fray at the services we deliver. Now, you could decide that a 0 increase is more important, but there will be losses of service. That's why I think I like the mayor's idea of let's do the scenario so that we know where it would impact us. But I don't think 0 is the wisest to do because it may take 6 months, but people will feel that loss of service in our schools, and we'll have parents who see that with their kids, and in all the other municipal services. Fortunately, right now, they're at a really high level. But let's challenge our department heads to do that, but I don't think we should set that as a target.
So, and we'll have a vote. If we don't have a further amendment, we'll have a vote shortly on the 0%. The issue that we're facing as a city, as a country, I would say, but certainly as a city, is inflation has put a lot of price pressure on all wages that exist. If you, follow the advertisements, and I don't know why I do this, but in terms of other commercial operations for things like trash pickup, there are significant signing bonuses that exist there. It is a competitive industry to be in. It is one that is, it's hard to retain talent within DPW. Forget, we'll face the same things in teachers, but there's a lot of price pressure when it comes to wages in the city of Portsmouth after the pandemic. Those wages are not going back down. And so to not recognize that, I think, is difficult. The second thing that happens when we came in terms of a lower budget, the vast majority was capital outlays. It wasn't positions. It was capital outlays. It was rolling stock. It was things that certainly could have been deferred 1 year, but they were picked back up into future budgets. And so I do have concerns that if we give a 0 guidance on this and it's not tied to actual employees, it's kicking the can down the road. Now, we could have a different policy when it comes to rolling stock if we feel as though that is no longer the most cost-effective. It turns out that most of the time we agree that making those investments is important, but it's difficult to do that with a focus of 0% because the rises are with the employees. And so I would love to be able to see a scenario where we have 2.5%. If that's what the council is comfortable with, that seems aggressive, but also to see a scenario with what 0% would look like, to give that conversation to the residents that are not going to be sitting watching every one of these meetings, but will watch as we discuss those positions and where they would have to be taken from if we were to go down that route. Councilor Bagley?
Your Honor, Councilor Monroe was nice enough to show me the unaudited year-end for fiscal 24, or it might have been fiscal 23, but on June 30th, 2024. And doing some very quick math, the actual spent was $138,007,895 from a budget of $138,623,375, which works out to less than 0.5%. So I'd be comfortable giving the guidance that we give tonight based on the proposed budget of last year versus the actual of last year, because I think in the grand scheme of things, we're talking about less than 1%. So if we wanted to, we could either round up 1% or down 1%, rather than try and create this very cumbersome, trying to get the exact financials and build off that exact financials versus building off the budget, which we have all this data on. If that makes sense.
Yes.
Makes sense.
So I would correct what I said to Councilor Monroe. Just to that, yeah.
Okay, so we're moving off of the approved budget of last year, where we have so the approved budget and looking for a 2.5% or a 0% increase is the motion on the floor.
Yeah. And I would be willing to modify my amendment, modify my motion after this vote, more in line with the council's thinking.
Okay, Councilor Bellick? All right, we'll call the vote on 0%.
0%. Assistant Mayor Kelly?
No.
Counselor Tabor?
No.
Counselor Cook?
No.
Counselor Denton?
Yes.
Counselor Blaylock?
Yes.
Counselor Bagley?
No.
Counselor Moreau?
No.
Counselor Lombardi?
No.
Mayor McEachran?
Yes.
Motion fails. 3 in favor and 6 opposed.
Okay, we're back to the original motion?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would amend my motion to make the target 2.9%, and also ask the city manager to give us detail on what a zero increase budget would mean in loss of services.
Is there further, is there a second first?
Second?
Oh, wait,
Oh, we already have a.
hold on. So you amended your own motion that was
So
previously
the second
on?
has to approve.
Who was the second?
Second.
That's Josh, bless you. Well, that's you. Yeah.
Councilor Bagley?
Thanks, Your Honor, and I'll be voting for the amended motion. As much as I'd like to see it match COLA at 2.5%, this council has approved on almost all of the contracts, I would say, over the last 4 years. And right now, we have a 2.84% COLA with our contracts. So I think to ask the city to come in below that 2.84% number is unrealistic.
Councilor Denton?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just as a reminder, assuming this passes and when this comes back, and if it doesn't come back at 2.8, 2.9, if the council does not pass a budget, it defaults to the city manager's proposed budget, which will be far higher than that.
Well noted. Any other comments?
Counselor Cook has her hand raised.
Oh, Councilor Cook.
Thank you, Your Honor. While I appreciate the change in the motion, I don't think I can support it at 2.9%. I think it needs to be 2.5%. And even if that is extremely challenging, I think it would be helpful to be looking at that budget that way. We can always come back and modify it if the proposed cuts are too extreme for the council. But I think that if we set it at 2.9, it's going to come in at 2.9.
Certainly a point to consider. I voted to support the 0% simply because it is a guidance and we will be able to make the final determination. I don't necessarily have a huge difference in terms of 2.9% versus 2.5%. As long as we have the 0% on there, I think that we will be able to make those choices. And while this is somewhat of an important vote, the vote that we make at sometime in July is going to be or June, not July, June, is going to be the most important vote. And I think that we're in the ballpark in terms of what is going to get the conversation, especially with the addition of 0% over the budgeted of last year as information to be able to make those conversations. I also think it is important to show that that it is over last year's budgeted amount, so the positions that existed last year, and not as a percentage of, just the overall budget, but what actual positions existed from last year to make sure that we are being as efficient as possible in the services that we provide. So I will support this. I feel like, again, with the addition of 0% and the lower number that is in line with inflation, we can get what we need to inform the taxpayers and to make our decisions. Any other, Councilor Bullock?
Thank you, Your Honor. I guess I'll also be supporting it. Thank Councilor Tabor for adding the 0% just to see what that, because like I said, I know it's really hard to come under 0%, but I wanted to at least try to set a really high goal, but at least I'd like to see what that will look like.
We will have a roll call vote if there's no more discussion. All right. Kelly, please take the roll.
Assistant Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Tabor?
Yes.
Councilor Cook?
No.
Councilor Denton?
Yes.
Councilor Blaylock?
Yes.
Councilor Bagley?
Yes.
Councilor Moreau?
Yes.
Councilor Lombardi?
Yes.
Mayor McEachran?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-1.
Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome.
To Councilor Cook.
Signed up yet.
Kelly, can you please note that Councilor Cook will not join for the rest of the meeting, as I understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Councilor Cook. Next up is first reading of ordinance, amendment to Chapter 10 zoning ordinance, zoning map, Article 4, zoning district and use regulations, Section 10.421, district location and boundaries, Section 10.421.10, to be amended to remove 185 Orchard Street, tax map 152, lot 2.1 from the historic district overlay.
Your Honor, I move that the City Council pass first reading and schedule a public hearing and second reading of the proposed zoning map amendment at the February 18th, 2025 City Council meeting.
Second?
Any discussion? Councilor Bagley.
Thank you, Your Honor. Really happy to see this come forward. I watched the HDC meeting, and they are talking about fixing all those little orphaned HDC properties on Middle Street and somewhere else in the city. And I know a number of residents that are in the HDC for compliance reasons, but not really in the HDC. Will be excited to see that they have a chance to be removed so they can replace their windows and add solar panels without all that extra fuss.
All right. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Next up, the city manager's items which require action.
Your Honor, I have 5 tonight. The first one is a request to replace Brian Getz, who served as the city's representative on the Seacoast Commission on Long-Term Goals and Requirements for Drinking Water. We are looking to replace Brian with Al Pratt, our Water Resources Manager.
Your Honor. I move to appoint Albert Pratt, Water Resources Manager, as the City of Portsmouth's representative to the Seacoast Commission on Long-Term Goals and Requirements for Drinking Water.
Second. Any discussion?
I'll just say we're lucky to have Al Pratt represent the city and keep our drinking water clean.
Thank you. Al is on Zoom. We need him later in the broadcast, too. So thank you, Al.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Item number 2 is a renewal of a parking agreement that the city has enjoyed with Strawberry Bank Museum. And the current, we have had an agreement. The most recent 10-year agreement expired recently, back on January 12th. This agreement permits members of the public to park in their parking lot located at 17 Hancock Street during such occasions as snow emergency parking bans, which we just had. And the parking agreement in your packet is essentially the same. However, it does allow for the museum to restrict or reduce the public's access depending on whether they plan to construct improvements to their lot.
Your Honor, I move that the city manager be authorized to negotiate and enter into a parking agreement with Strawberry Bank in a form similar to what's in the packet.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you, and thank you to Strawberry Bank. Number 3 and number 4 are similar. I'll take them in order. Number 3 is a request for public hearing at the next City Council meeting on February 3rd to review the elderly exemptions for property taxes. As you will recall, the council adopted resolution last year which increased the income level for qualifying elderly taxpayers along with the increase in the exemption amounts. And what we would like to do is bring back that conversation. It is that time of year because we need to work toward approving all of this before the application deadline of April 15th of this year. So Roseanne Lentz, our city assessor, will be present at the February 3rd meeting to present the options which are in your packet and lead the discussion and the public hearing as well.
Your Honor, I move to schedule a public hearing on February 3rd, 2025 at the February 3rd, 2025 City Council meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Bagley.
Thank you, Your Honor. I noticed when looking at the pro-offered charts, I think last year we were behind a couple communities with the single exemptions. And we've taken pride in having the best exemptions in the state. And I think as a result of that, I noticed that the charts proposed for this year, we're behind a couple communities for the married exemptions. Would it be possible to have a third option that puts us in the pole position for all of the married and single?
That would be a policy decision of the council and
Certainly can have that, and part of it is that we've set these earlier than other communities, and they've passed their budgets after. But by setting this public hearing, we can have the conversation. I know that Roseanne was eager to make some adjustments based on last year's revaluation and cautioned us against some of the increases in deductions because of anticipation that we would increase the eligibility, and to do so in a fiscal responsible way for the rest of the tax base would mean that more people would qualify, and so we got to be mindful of that. But this is the first step, and then those questions to Roseanne will ultimately end up in whatever policy decision we come through with this budget cycle.
Great.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Item number 4 is similar, except for consideration for the disabled exemptions. So the request would be similar in bringing this forward for a public hearing at the February 3rd council meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to schedule a public hearing on February 3rd, 2025, City Council meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
And last item under my name is a request for a public hearing also at the February 3rd City Council meeting. We're going to be busy that night. On the Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund. We have Al Pratt on Zoom with any questions, but again, he will present next meeting as part of that public hearing. But essentially what we're looking to do is to let folks be aware that the city is taking advantage of funding with a 71% forgiveness factor from which the city would benefit for $2 million and make available up to $1.5 million for those private entities that need to come into compliance. So whereas some communities in New Hampshire are simply notifying their residents and hoping the residents find a way in the next 10 years to become compliant, the city is being proactive in making these loan funds available to that small number of private connections. So Al will give a little more color to this on the February 3rd public hearing, but we're looking to set that hearing tonight.
Your Honor, I move to schedule a public hearing at the February 3rd, 2025 City Council meeting to authorize the borrowing of up to $3.5 million from the New Hampshire Drinking Water State Revolving Fund to assist customers in galvanized service line replacements and fund service line inventory compliance efforts.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Lombardi?
Thank you, Mayor. Al Pratt has been leading this effort over the last few years of understanding the issues of these galvanized pipes and lead pipes connecting to residential properties. It's required by the EPA to have this completed. I forget the date, but in the 2030s.
Correct.
And this will get a long way to getting it finished. There's somewhere around 700, I believe, undetected services at this point.
So this ties to the folks have maybe received letters and communications regarding whether or not the city knows or doesn't know. Doesn't necessarily mean that your pipes are lead, but it means that the city wants to find out whether or not they are lead or not. The money that the city manager and city staff went out and got was a loan, or well, hopefully we will approve this so that those customers, ratepayers, citizens of Portsmouth, are, when they're presented with this information, they have a pathway to economically do this work. It gets us into compliance, and it gets them with the peace of mind that they're not having lead pipes in their homes. So thank you again to the city manager and staff for putting this forward, and Al Pratt for all the work that you do to keep the water safe. I would expect once this moves forward that if there's not already a portion on the website that can help explain this process to the end user, to the citizen, that we would quickly do so, because I've fielded a number of questions myself just on what are these notifications. This would be a great way to send them that it's not going to be a huge bill that they're going to face, but the city is planning for that. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, next up, consent agenda. We have two on there, a letter from Latrice Smith on the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, and from Jenna Reyes of Portsmouth Little League requesting to add signage at 3 City Fields.
Your Honor, I move to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Next up, email correspondence.
Yes, Your Honor. I move to accept and place on file.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Next, we have appointments to be voted. The first reappointment of Jeff Stern to the Board of Library Trustees, the appointment of Bill Bowen to the Planning Board, the reappointment of Anthony Coviello to the Planning Board, the appointment of Ryan Wolf to the Planning Board, the appointment of Frank Perrier as an alternate to the Planning Board, the appointment of Frederick Calcinari and Rian Talierco to the Sustainability Committee, and the reappointment of Thomas Watson to the trustees of the trust funds.
Your Honor, I would move to reappoint Jeff Stern to the Board of Library Trustees, and to appoint Bill Bowen to the Planning Board, to reappoint Anthony Coviello to the Planning Board, the appointment of Ryan Wolf and Frank to the Planning Board, and the appointment of Frank Perrier as an alternate to the Planning Board, and the appointment of Frank Calcirini and Rayan Talaricio to the Sustainability Committee, and a reappointment of Thomas Watson to the trustees of the trust funds.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you for the service to Portsmouth. Next up, we've gone through Councilor Tabor's, and I think somebody was going to take up Councilor Cook's request for first reading regarding adoption of fees ordinance.
Your Honor, this comes out of the Governance Committee, and I would move to bring forward adoption of the fees ordinance for first reading at the February 3rd, 2025 City Council meeting.
Second.
Essentially, this is a slight modification to the policy around the fee committee, allowing fees to be set not just every year, but as needed.
Any discussion? And reset during a year as well. Is that?
That would be true.
Okay. So it's not just we get to add a fee whenever we want, but we could potentially lower fees when we needed to in the calendar year. Okay.
Or raise.
Or raise.
Or raise.
But as always, as New Hampshire state law, fees can only be to compensate us for what we spent.
That's correct, yes.
The cost of doing the business.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Councilor Blaylock.
Thank you, Your Honor. I am pleased to announce that Student Government Day is back. We will be hosting Student Government Day Friday, March 28th, right here in the City Council chambers. But I want to thank all city staff, all the councilors, school board. It takes really a village to make this happen, but I think the kids really benefit from it. This year we're going to add the school board as part of it, try to grow it a little bit. So students will be shadowing the school board members at the March 25th school board meeting. And then the students will be shadowing the city councilors up here on the March 17th city council meeting. So I and whoever wants to join me, I'm meeting the Student Senate on Saturday, February 1st.
I'll be there.
And city manager at 9 a.m. Try to help them promote participation to the rest of the student body. And then we'll be having an organizational meeting on the 13th of March, just to help them plan, try to give them an idea of what city councilors do, what the mayor does. I know a lot of times they get confused and they're very focused on the school and they sometimes don't understand what the difference between school board and city council. But I just want to thank everyone again for their participation, and I hope it goes well again this year. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Look forward to it, March 28th.
Yeah.
All right. Next up is approvals of grants and donations. Acceptance of Overwatch.gov grant in the award of $10,000.
Your Honor, I move to approve and accept the grant as presented.
So moved. Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
If I can, Your Honor, just to put that in perspective, this will go live next week. And we will have lots of information to that effect. Our Chief Information Officer, Ryan Babcock's here. He's been quarterbacking the effort, but this will impact everybody in the city system, and it will provide a greater sense of security. Thanks.
It's going to look real fancy here.
We are.
Gov. All right. Next up is the acceptance of donation for the restoration of the Old North Cemetery from David and Jacqueline Mahoney Fund in the amount of $10,000.
Your Honor, I move to approve and accept the donation as presented.
Second?
Just would like to note, this is, and I see that the chair of the cemetery committee is still in the audience. This is a really generous gift from the Mahoneys to this, and it comes at a fantastic time with the upcoming celebration of our nation's founding, and those interned therein very much appreciate this, and I know that it will go to good use, honoring our past to more and more folks, as is the wishes of the Mahoneys. So thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? On to the informational items of the city manager.
Brief update from the January PDA board meeting. We are seeing big improvements to be made by July 1st of this year by Port City Air. They're making big improvements to their hangar. They're also welcoming as a subtenant Boston Medflight, which is a really big deal for this part of the world. We will take a lot of the traffic out of the Lawrence and Merrimack Valley area and better service with ambulatory services northern New England. So that's a big deal. That will start March 1st. Eversource is increasing both the capacity and the strength of its infrastructure at the trade port. A fun fact that the Air National Guard Tower at Pease is the 9th busiest Air Force tower in the world. And you may have seen an uptick in activity there with all the activity supporting what's going on in Europe. Through the Division of Ports and Harbors, the Portsmouth Fish Pier building, the commercial fish pier, had a kickoff meeting recently, and in 7 months we will expect to see a new fish pier building there, approximately 6,000 square feet. That's a big deal and a long time coming. The PDA board does not meet in February, so your next update will be March. The second update I have is exciting news on the procurement front, and we're excited to share that our new online procurement platform through our permitting vendor OpenGov has gone live, so folks from the public can see all of this live as we do. Vendors can submit their responses electronically. Pricing tabulations can be easily generated. All of this will be really as transparent as it can be and is up to date. So, so far things have been going well, and additional elements of the implementation of the platform for procurement will follow over the next several months, and we'll bring you updates. Lastly is a request for a report back on a request we got from a nonprofit organization located in Maine known as Sweetser. They are not seeking reimbursement for their services. The city attorney did some research into this. This simply was a fundraising request to the city. So what we've done, rather than to give them a flat, polite no, our welfare director will work with them to see if they might qualify for our social services grant program. That's your report back. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything under miscellaneous? Councilor Tabor.
Yes, Your Honor. Before he left, our housing navigator submitted for the Housing Champion Award given out by the state. We won the Housing Champion Award. We got a plaque, and we also got $64,000. And the Housing Committee discussed that last week. That will be used to audit and look at all of our zoning and find ways that we can create more housing. And it'll have a public process component so that any of the proposed changes would go through some kind of public process.
Thank you, Councilor Tabor. With that, I'd wait a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Good night, Portsmouth.